We believe it's possible that Cooper's body and the money became snagged up on one of these ships' propellers and it moved upstream with the ship. At some point, the violence of this ripped open the bank bag and spilled out the money.
It may surprise you to know that I actually think Tom Kaye raises a very interesting point within his interesting hypothesis. Something had to cause this bag to rip open. It didn't just happen by itself. And Kaye's hypothetical story actually acknowledges this fact. He doesn't come out and explicitly state it, but he does put it into, he does create an element in the story. Basically that propeller turbulence is going and this bag's dragging and the turbulence, the force of the water rips open the bag and caught, right in front of where the money was found. And so therefore, as he says, increasing the odds that 3 of them would be found together. Well, it's not just 3 of them found together, it's 3 of them found within 1 square foot and nowhere else. So that's only one problem that this hypothesis has. I'm not going to go into a great discussion about Kaye's hypothesis here, but basically, just off the cuff, his hypothesis requires independent stack travel, which I just covered. It's only found here and not here. So if it busts out in the middle of the river, that's independent stack travel. And we've shown that this did not happen. Our 4 observations pretty much prove that that didn't happen. And further, it requires Palmer, which of course if you watch this episode, they try to debunk Palmer 30, talk about Monday morning quarterbacking. These guys are 40-year quarterbacking, or 30-year quarterbacking, I should say. But they basically say Palmer's absolutely wrong, and I find that to be a very amateur route to go. And also, frankly, center channel of the river is not in the yellow zone. You remember the yellow zone on that map that I showed you? That's all river bed area, not center channel area. So the money can't really come from the center channel, but I don't really need to get into that right now. We have other things to discuss, and I don't have much time. So, how does this bag rip? Okay, in Kaye's story, you got a propeller that causes it to rip. Well, so since we conclude that the money must have traveled inside the actual bag, how did it rip? Because it has to rip. And why does this happen? What caused it? And conventional standard wisdom, the conventional answer has always been that the bag got snagged on something, a branch, a log of some kind, or even Tassaw's hypothesis was it got snagged on some rocks at the bottom of the river. So it gets snagged, and at some point, over decay or whatever, or the snagging itself rips it open, and that's where that's why the money leaks out of the bag. Seems pretty straightforward. However, the snagging has to happen precisely where the money was discovered, via our previous observations that we made. There's not a whole lot at this beach to snag a bag of money. There's no rocks, there's no trees, there's no logs really. Okay, now at the time maybe there's a log or something, I don't know. But that's not the only problem, because there's a secondary factor, and that is snagging or tearing of the bag requires a high velocity. So you have to have this money, you have to have a lot of force, such as in Kaye's situation where he has a propeller, generating thrust against the bag. Well, in this case, it's just it's happening naturally, so that it has to get snagged on a branch of some kind, and then the force of the water has to rip it open. Well, problem is, we're talking about a very durable bag here, one that would presumably survive 7+ years up to this point, and yet we're talking about a very low velocity river, especially at this point. Go there, it's very tranquil, it's very quiet, it's very calm, very soothing. There's a little bit of a current, but that's about it. It's not really like rapids or anything like that. It's not fast, no high velocity, no high energy. So these observations that I've made seem to raise some concerns, and I find them to be legitimate concerns, so let's investigate them further. Let's talk about the bag itself, because I think the more we understand about this bag, the better we can solve this puzzle. It's been described by Larry Carr in previous postings that he made a few years ago that the bag was 12 by 12 by 9. And unfortunately those dimensions just simply don't add up. I know how big a stack of cash is, and I know how many stacks of cash were in the bag, and it can't fit in those dimensions. So if someone got their story wrong, actual dimensions of the bag would be closer to 19 by 12 by 9. I give you the fudge factor and call it 17 by 12 by 9. Now how do I know this? Well, I know how big a stack of cash is, and I can add. It's very simple. Here is a artist rendition of the stack of cash. Me being the artist, so forgive it, please. But look at the dimensions here. I've made it 3 stacks deep. Now you can make it 2 stacks deep, which would make it taller, but really the reason I made it 3 stacks deep is if you made it 3 stacks deep, you get 9 inches deep, 12 inches wide, and 17 inches high. So you're at least hitting 2 of the so-called dimensions that were given. And really, in this picture, I want you to just subtract 2 stacks of cash, because in this picture that I drew, that's actually 102 stacks of cash. And the dimensions really are a minimum. They're not the maximum. It's not like I have 100 stacks to test this out. But I do know that the volume is going to be roughly between 8 to 9 gallons large, depending on how compact you want to make it. How much do the bills weigh? Well, this has been pretty much talked about already. A dry stack weighs 21.25 pounds. There's the math, and here's the proof. Some people have actually disputed this calculation, so I'm showing you the proof right here. There's a stack of cash, stack of 20s. On my digital scale, you can clearly see 3.4 ounces times 100 stacks is 340 ounces. 16 ounces to a pound, 21.25 pounds. Now the real question that comes to mind is, that's great, we're talking about a dry stack of cash, but we're not talking about a dry stack of cash, are we? We're talking about a wet stack of cash, and that weighs 6.5 ounces. This is going to come in really handy because we need to solve this puzzle. So that means bag of money, very least the money itself, weighed over almost 41 pounds when it was wet and saturated. Okay, a drenched bag is probably going to weigh about 50 pounds. I'm just guessing because it's going to have extra water in there, but again, I've never been able to actually test this. I wanted to. It was very tough to come up with 100 stacks of cash at my local bank. I would have had it right around town for a week accumulating all that. So